When I first get the students in my class, I always ask them, what do they know about operations management? And most of them, as I would expect, don't know very little or nothing about it. So now the question is, how do I make this topic relevant to them and exciting to them? And some of the students may have had experience like a summer job or a retail job or whatever be the case. And for me, it is that connecting them to the experience they had to what I teach in class. So for instance, when we walk into a restaurant, we experience certain service, and that includes all the different decisions that have been made before, which is staffing, which is scheduling people, number of tables to open and stuff like that. This is something that a student potentially can understand. Since our students don't have a lot of experience with this topic, now I want to engage them with the content. And one of the ways to engage them with the content is basically go through this idea of active learning strategies. And two of them that I picked that seem to be the most relevant in my class is one, ask them to do some sort of hands-on exercise. For instance, I talk about the idea of lean management and waste reduction and so on, which I can talk through and lecture through it, but having them do an exercise in class, which is hands-on and in teams, that helps them to relate the topic that we've already covered and apply it in a somewhat of simulated setting. So for instance, I use Legos to simulate a manufacturing environment. Everybody has played with Legos, so they are excited as students. So now I just transform that into being a manufacturing setting. And then we walk through and say, okay, here are some of my rules, and some of them are going to be ridiculous when we start with. And they play, and then immediately they realize, oh, there's so much waste here, we could improve the process and so on. So they apply lean principles and basically improve the process. And through that, they're actively learning essentially the principles of lean and waste reduction and so on. It is really difficult and challenging to talk about global supply chain issues and management and all the different intricacies that are there in a classroom setting. So the easiest way to do it is to talk through all of this and then take our students to some of the local companies. I've taken them, for instance, the McCormick or East Coast Fresh. These are food processing companies, for instance, and food manufacturers, and to talk with the professionals who do this job of managing supply chains on a day in and day out. They get a first-hand experience of how to manage supply chains, the complexities involved in it, and all the different things that go behind the scenes for the products to show up at the store shelf so that we could go and buy it. When we come back into the classroom after a site visit or going through the simulation, we basically talk through and say, okay, what did you learn? What are some of the interesting things that you observed? What surprised you? And these are the things that I look for in our students, beyond, of course, their comprehension and understanding and of the concepts and so on. One of the things that I also see more and more is when the students go away, 2-3 weeks after the site visit, suddenly I get an email saying, hey, remember we talked about this or we saw this at the site? I observed this in a different setting, and this is how I'm connecting all the different material out there. So that for me shows that I've done my job in terms of teaching them exactly what they need to learn, and from now on they can go ahead and observe all the different elements of operations and supply chain management.